welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie, and today it's February, the end of February, and I'm bringing you my November and December wrap up. Yeah, that's right, I'm a few months late and I'm still trying to play catch up, and I've actually videotaped this video 2 different times. This is take number 3. First time around, the audio was really off and I had like background noise and my dogs were like playing in the background and being loud and stuff was going on outside, so just whatever. And then the second one, I accidentally deleted. So here I am, 3rd time's a charm, and instead of trying to go through each one of my books, because I have quite a bit between the months of November and December that I will be telling you guys about, it's gonna be kind of short and sweet. So instead of really diving into like the synopsis of the book and then what I thought about it, I'm just gonna give you my rating, as well as my star prediction, what kind of book it was, and then maybe like a smidge of why I rated it the way that I did. So without further ado, let's just get into this. So in the month of November, the first book that I had finished is The Glass Sword by Victoria Aveyard. This is the second book in the Red Queen series, which I started back in August with my sister. We buddy read the first one. I waited a few months to finally pick this one up and just decided on a whim to read it in December. And although I rated the Red Queen 5 stars and I loved it, this one I only rated 3 stars just because it was quite slow, and that's kind of what really made me base my rating for 3 stars instead of rating it higher. I love the story itself, but it was quite slow at times, and I understand because a lot of times sequels, the second book in a series, can sometimes drag because it is trying to set up for the next book, or kind of you're in a lull because you're just you're getting more information and answers to the questions that maybe you didn't get in the first book. This is a YA fantasy series, of course. I think there's 4 books in it. And I rated it PG-13, just due to some language that was dropped in here, as well as there was quite a bit of violence actually, so PG-13 for me. The next book that I picked up in the month of November is The Male Brain by Luann Brizendine. She is a medical doctor. This is a non-fiction physiology type of book that explains how the male brain works and why it works and kind of ticks due to just hormones that are given from the time they are in the womb to the time they are babies, toddlers, children, teenagers, men, elderly, and so forth. So it kind of breaks everything down on what the majority of men get as hormones and why their brain kind of thinks the way they do, why they're a little bit different than women, of course. It's actually quite short because the majority of this book is like references in the back. So for me, I'm rating it only 3 stars because I kind of wish there was just a little bit more information. Like if I'm going into a book wanting to know the real ins and outs on why certain things work or certain things tick, I wanted to know it all, and I felt like it was kind of vague. I felt like there was times there could have been a little bit more facts or information in here, but I do understand that this was written quite like several years ago, and so maybe if this book had come out now, it would be a little bit more information in here. I don't know. I'm rating it rated R because we are talking about the male brain here. So as you get into like your preteens, your teenagers, your young males, and even, you know, like your grandfathers and things like that, it does talk about the sexual thoughts that they get, why they do what they do, due to hormones and things like that. And so it is very detailed in that sense. So definitely rated R for sexual content, mature content, that kind of stuff. The next book that I finished in the month of November is Lethal White by Robert Galbraith, which is also the pen name or pseudonym for J.K. Rowling. This is book number 4 in the Cormoran Strike series. I loved it. If any of you have been following my channel, you'll know that I'm a huge Cormoran Strike fan, and I really enjoyed this one. I'm giving it 4 stars. It's definitely rated R. It has murder, it's got suicide, so of course violence, suicide, language, some sexual topics. It's a mystery crime thriller type of book. 4 stars. The last book that I picked up in the month of November is Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J. Maas. If you've watched any of my previous wrap-ups back in like August, September, October, I was flying through the first 3 books in the Court of Thorns and Roses series. So when I picked up this novella, I was a little hesitant because a lot of people had not nice things to say or just was like, meh, I don't get the point of it. But to really break it down, I loved it. 5 stars. This is a YA fantasy series. The reason why I'm giving it 5 stars is maybe because the time that I read it, which is at the end of November, so really close to Christmas time, this really packed a punch because this is about the Fae world and Farah and Rhys and all of their friends after the last battle that they had just endured in the 3rd book. And it kind of gives you a glimpse into the Winter Court, which is, they're going into their winter season, and they kind of celebrate Christmas, but in a much different light. It has nothing to do with Christianity, it has nothing to do with Jesus, it has nothing to do with Santa Claus. It's more about just family and friends and Christmas time and having that Christmas time feel. And I really loved it. You got to see the ins and outs of how this family and this group of friends that is technically a family, how they all love each other and support each other, or, you know, accept each other for their flaws. There are some career changes in here, which can make kind of a difference in probably the next book. So I'm giving this 5 stars. It is rated R due to just quite a bit of sex, and there is some language. Audible original in the month of December, and it's called Gather Round the Sound. And I don't remember who put it all together. I'm really bad, but I'm giving this like a 2 star, and that's even being nice. It was a bunch of short stories that were put together that's kind of around Christmas time. Some were definitely like retellings, like a Charles Dickens retelling, like podcast kind of feel stories to it, and some were okay, but the very last one is what really did it in for me, that I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cheesy, it is so cringy. And if you've listened to it, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It was just ridiculous, a waste of my time. I should probably just give it a 1 star. And it was G-rated. The next book that I had picked up in the month of December is Winter Street by Ellen Hildebrandt, cis one. It is a contemporary family drama, kind of romance. It wasn't bad. I'm giving it like about a 3.5 probably. If you know me on my channel, you'll know that I'm not a big contemporary reader. A lot of times I find contemporary books kind of cheesy at times or just over the top. And so sometimes I really have a hard time getting into them because I'm eye rolling half the time, like, really, this is so cheesy. But so this definitely had its cheesy moments. I like that there was this nice family feel and there was family drama. I'm giving it a PG-13 rating just for, there is some sexual, like, not actual content, but like topics. Like, you know what they're doing, but it doesn't go into detail, that sort of thing. So it's the assumption of like sex is happening, and there's also like cheating involved, and so PG-13. The next book that I picked up in December is a book by Rush Limbaugh, which is called Rush Revere and the First Patriots. Now, my mother-in-law bought the entire set, which there are 5 books in this set, for my youngest, who is 10 years old. He is a 4th grader. She got these for him. Anyways, I also downloaded them on Audible for him. He loved it. Him and I read this together, and I love the fact that Rush Limbaugh has spun this into like a fun kind of like middle grade fantasy series where it's taking like realistic things that happened in history, but then he's taking like these modern day kids and a magical horse that can time travel, and he takes his middle school students back in time to learn about history and see it in real person. And so I loved that concept, and so technically my kid is learning about American history that no one really talks about, that didn't hurt him in any way to learn it, because to him it was just a fun story. But lo and behold, he's actually learning some American history, which I would have killed to have had these books when I was a kid. It's about like the Boston Tea Party and how King George III was trying to place taxation on the 13 colonies, even though they were technically in the Americas. The British king was still trying to like put his thumb on them and tell them how to run things and tax them and whatnot. And so this is their uprising of, we're not going to accept taxation and all that. So I really loved this. I gave it 5 stars. It's a historical fiction fantasy type of thing, and it's definitely G-rated. The next book that I picked up in the month of December is Holes by Louis Sachar. Sachar, I think is how you pronounce it. I've been wanting to read this forever, but I decided to pick it up in December because my fourth grader, once we were done with Rush Revere, his class was actually reading this together in their fourth grade. So I figured I'd pick it up so him and I can discuss it and talk about it, and the fact that I've never read it and it's kind of a modern classic, I should probably pick it up. Anyways, I loved it. There was actually quite a bit diversity in here, which I really liked, and it's teaching just about, you know, being good, morally good versus bad, and when to stand up for yourself and whatnot. I really enjoyed it. 5 stars, PG. It is just a middle grade fiction novel about a boy who gets in trouble and has to go to like this kid's camp out in the middle of the desert where they dig holes as their punishment. The next book that I read in the month of December is Speaking from Among the Bones by Alan Bradley. If you've been watching my channel at all, you will know that I have been trekking through this series. This is book number 5. I think the 10th one just came out, like in January, or maybe February. I can't remember. But anyways, this is book number 5. This is about Flavia de Luce. She is a young, like 11, 12-year-old girl who's kind of like your Sherlock Holmes, private eye. She's obsessed with death and poisons, and she's not your average 11 or 12-year-old. She's full of sass and sarcasm. She's blunt as can be. I just love her. I love the stories that each book tells, that just moves on to like the next murder mystery that she's like got herself sucked into. 5 stars. This one left on a crazy cliffhanger that I was like, oh my gosh. This whole time I've been giving these books like 3 to 4 stars. 5 stars hands down. The way it left on this cliffhanger, I was like, what? I gotta read the next book like right away, which thank God I do have. But granted, it's February now. I read this back in December. I still haven't picked up the 6th book. There's something wrong with me. But anyways, this is definitely PG. It does sometimes drop like hell or damn, but it's like very, very small amount. So still like PG. I don't want to bump it up to PG-13 because really, this is more like seriously like a YA. It's stuck between like YA and middle grade. Mystery, Sherlock Holmes feel. Yeah, I liked it. 5 stars. The next one that I finished in the month of December is, of course, the bind-up edition, Robert Louis Stevenson's Gothic horror short story. So of course it starts off with Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and there's about like 8 or 10 short stories in here. So I read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and the first like 3 or 4 short stories back in October for like Halloween kind of feel. But then I didn't pick it up back up until December and decided to finish the remaining stories, which I had about 5 left. And each story I rated something a little bit different. I finished the remaining 5 stories in the month of December, and I gave them all a G rating, except for the very last one, which is called The Body Snatcher, which I kind of bumped up to PG, just because that particular story goes into like digging up graves and grave robbers and dead skeletons and things like that. So I kind of went from a G to a PG. I rated each one like between probably a 2 and a 4 star. Some were okay. Others were like, oh, that was stupid. And then others I was like, oh, that wasn't too bad. But overall, out of all of the short stories, I'm rating this entire thing probably about a 3 star. No, I'm bad. I'm glad I read it. Check that off my bucket list of things I wanted to read. The next book that I read in the month of December, of course, was my last Audible original that I got for free through Audible in the month of December, and it's called The Christmas Hirelings. Hirelings? I think that's how you say it. I gave it 4 stars. I rated it G. It was actually a cute story. It was very classic and whimsical. It's a story that was written like around 100 years ago. I got like Charles Dickens feels from it, and crap, I can't remember who wrote it. God, I'm terrible at this. But anyways, I really pleasantly enjoyed it. It was about an older man who his youngest daughter runs off and marries a young man that he doesn't approve of, so he disowns her, and as he ages, he's become like this grumpy old hermit in his house, and just depressed and whatnot, hasn't spoken to his daughter in years, and a doctor says, I know what the best medicine is for you. You just need to have some children in your house for Christmas time. And he says, all right, I'll do it. And this doctor shows up with 2 or 3 kids. And of course, this man who's very grumpy kind of falls head over heels for this little girl. She's got him wrapped around her finger. She's just cute and adorable. And he's just like, this is the daughter I should have had, kind of a thing. And it goes from there. Anyways, it was kind of like that Scrooge kind of feeling. And I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. 4 stars. I'm almost done, you guys, I swear. Okay, so the next book that I read in the month of December is Season of Wonder by Rianne Thane. I was kind of bummed out by this, but like I said, I have a really hard time with contemporary novels. But I was super stoked to get this one because it is set in Idaho and I live in Idaho, so I was like, hell yeah. It was okay. I'm giving it 3 stars. I don't know, I might even drop it down to like a 2.5 or a 2. Like it wasn't for me. I'm rating it PG. It's your contemporary holiday romance with, of course, a little bit of drama thrown in there. It's about this young mom who's got 2 young girls. One is a teenager, and she moves them all the way across the country to Idaho to kind of run away from their past and some bad things that happened. And of course, this mom befriends this hot sheriff dude, but she's like pushing and pulling, like, I like him, but I shouldn't like him, and I love him, but I shouldn't love him, and I can't, and she's just beating herself up, and it was just, half the time I just wanted to smack her and be like, girl, get over yourself. Like, the past is the past. Like, let it go. Oh, I don't know. It was okay, but it's probably between a 2 and a 3 star for me. Yeah. The last book that I read in the month of December is The Lost City of the Monkey God by Douglas Preston. Oh my gosh, I love this. This is a nonfiction, like archaeological history type of book. It's about this group of guys, your scientists, your archaeologists, the guy who's writing the book, 'cause he's a writer, go to find this lost city up in Honduras that, supposedly is plagued and cursed, but nobody's been really able to excavate it or discover it really. It's because it is such a dense part of this country, and there's a lot of political stuff going on, so you're dealing with like the Honduras military, and you don't want anyone to know about this place because they'll just ransack it, so they're trying to keep things under wrap. But at the same time, when they come across the city and they start like mapping it out, the way Douglas Preston explains things, things are so vivid. The way he explains the forest and the insects and the sounds and the dirt, you literally feel like you are really there. It was amazing. And then of course there is this myth that this city is potentially cursed because everyone that has ever been there over the last several hundreds of years has died from some sort of weird thing. And each one is much different. And of course, once this group comes back to the United States, sure enough, some crazy stuff starts happening and they start to think, is this place really cursed? I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. It was amazing the way he wrote this, and it's kind of cool to kind of learn about some of the history and how I'm a huge history archaeological buff, so this was like right up my alley. Definitely rated R. It does drop the F-bomb like multiple times, but I think in the situation that these guys were in, I would drop the F-bomb a lot too. I totally understand it, but at the same time, it didn't take away from the book. Like, it was so good. 5 stars. All right, there you have it. That is my November and December wrap up. Finally! Oh my gosh, I really need to get my shit together. Okay, so for November and December, I read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Technically, I read 12 books, but that doesn't include the short stories, the 5 short stories that I read from the Robert Louis Stevenson, the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde book. In the scheme of things, I'm only counting it as 1 book, so I read like 13 books. But other than that, it was a pretty good month. I wish I could go more into detail with all these, but because I had read them back in November, December, it's still kind of, like, some really stick out in my mind, and then others I'm like, I don't really remember much about this one. I just remember I didn't like it. So other than that, thank you so much for joining me. I can't wait to do another video for you guys, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.